Hi, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. We are a small-scale grower of roses, perennials, and other cool plants, and it is a cold one today. I've tucked out here to do this intro, but you'll see frost on the greenhouse behind me, and this is crop cover, covering off our young plants. I'll give you a peek underneath there as well. The topic I wanted to talk to you today about is why should growers have all the fun? And by fun, I mean access to a wider range and lower pricing of plants, or is that something that you could have access to as well? Now, I want to do a disclaimer here. If you look underneath here, you'll see a lot of plants that I've propagated myself. Well, of course, that's what I do once I have them in my hands. That's the best way for me to keep them available to my customers, is to take cuttings off of them as a low-cost operator, keep my costs down. Then I can spend my plant budget on new plants. And so that's what I'm going to be answering today, is where do I get those plants, and how can individual gardeners or groups of gardeners or garden clubs get access to some of those same deals. Back inside now, and you can see I have a whole bunch of plants inside here as well. Some of these are actually too tender to even be out there at all, so they're being overwintered right here on my bench. The rest of these are cuttings and seedlings that I've already got started in the middle of January here. So early start to the season and lots yet to come. I'm going to be shopping on my computer here. I'll show you screenshots along the way, and I will be naming the names of the vendors that I have dealt with in the past, but also telling you the secret of how you can find your different vendors or brokers within your region. I'll be talking about this in three different sections. The first one I'll be talking about is seeds. The second one I'll be talking about is bulbs and bare root. Those are bigger and bulkier and usually come from different suppliers. And the third one I'll talk about is cuttings and or plugs, so plant starts in that way. Now, I can't emphasize this enough. Seeds are a great way to add to your assortment, whether you're a home gardener or if you're in the early stages of starting a plant business. It's a great way of starting a lot of variety of plants for very little money. Seeds have the additional advantage of they don't cost a whole ton to ship around. I'm going to talk about some of my suppliers here. I have talked about some of these before, particularly in a video I did on getting fresh seed for your lavender, but it bears repeating. Hazards is a good seed supplier. I'll put in a screenshot of their site. Gelito is a place where I get a whole ton of my perennial seeds. They just have a wonderful assortment of perennials. Geoseed is another one that supplies for the cut flower trade, particularly, and for nurseries and greenhouses. Johnny's seeds, now they're a little more geared towards the veggie grower and the flower grower and even the home gardener, but what they do, and what's important about all of these different seed companies that I'm listing here, is that they have price breaks for when you get to larger quantities of seeds. So if you're buying just a packet, and you want to get 50 seeds, that's a higher price per seed. But if you're going for 1,000 or you're buying by weight, all of these guys have a break on that. Continuing down the list, William Dam seeds, that's in Canada here that I use them. Same deal, buy more, get a better price. And then I'm going to go on and list three here that are what you would call really wholesalers. Ivy Garth is sort of an industry supplier. Pan American Seeds is another big industry supplier, and Ball Seeds, we'll talk about them a little bit more later on, but is like the biggest industry supplier. Now, you might ask, well, do I need an account for all of these guys? Well, usually you have to sign up for an account, of course. But I guess the real question is, would they restrict me from having an account just as a personal gardener? And in most cases, the answer to that is no. We'll talk about that a little bit more later into the video here. But for seed companies in general, all of these, except for those last three, are definitely open to the public. And for Ivy Garth, Pan Am, and Ball Seeds, I think I had accounts with them long before I had a business number. Let's move on to the second category now, which is bulb and bare root suppliers. Bulbs and bare roots are a great way of getting plants because you're generally getting really big starts. As I say, bulbs of tulips or daffodils, everybody's familiar with those, but they make a flowering plant so quickly it's ridiculous, and they're brought in big bulk by the cut flower growers, lilies and all of that. So yeah, there's a lot of volume in that business, so the prices of the individual bulbs are quite low if you can get to the wholesale level. Bare roots are the same thing. Usually these same suppliers of bulbs are buying bare root perennials in from Holland or from their own growing fields or other suppliers in North America. So now the way that this business is very different from the seed business. Seeds, as I say, the shipping and brokerage and all of of that, the costs on that are much, much lower. Typically, there's a lot of players in the seed business and they can ship things very easily from place to place. With the bulb business, they're typically importing, at least the coolest stuff, they're importing from Holland and they're bringing in container loads. So these are not small businesses, and typically because the shipping costs are so bulk, they're bringing them to local distribution centers and then moving them out through the industry. So there are fewer players in this game, and usually they don't want to deal with individual gardeners, but they will deal with again, cut flower growers for sure, landscapers, and of course nurseries as well. So you may have to finagle around that a little bit, but the ones here in Canada that I would be dealing with are people like Van Noort or De Vroomen. In the US, it would be more likely to be somebody like Van Zyverden or Flamingo Holland. But once again, it's just a matter of searching out who are your local cut flower growers using for their bare root suppliers and then getting access to them. Now, the question, do you need a business license or a nursery license? And the answer that I found in this in the past was kind of no. And again, all of my accounts with these suppliers predate me having a business license of any sort. They're accustomed to dealing with small businesses that are informally run, like landscapers and cut flowers and so on. So they tend to be much more tolerant of not having the business license, but far more focused on you hitting the minimum orders. They really don't want to be dealing with $10 orders, $20 orders. They want to have like a 500, 1,000 minimum on their order, and they want to make sure, I mean, they tend to be a little bit more relaxed if you're not asking for credit. So if you're a cash customer who's buying at the minimums, in most cases they won't ask you anything further than that. Now, if they do get sticky about dealing with only the landscape professionals or the cut flower growers, well, you might know a landscaper, you probably certainly do know a small grower, you at least know me, so you usually can convince somebody like that to add on to their own order, because it helps them out to meet their minimums. So usually if you can get together with small growers, and in the case of garden clubs and so on, my experience in the past has been that these big bulb suppliers have no problem dealing with groups or even individuals as long as you can hit those minimum orders. The third category I wanted to talk about is those suppliers that supply plug trays of cuttings or rooted plants. So these are plugs, but you can also buy them at the cutting stage and then stick them yourself if you have a propagation setup like this that I have behind me. So the advantage of this is sort of an intermediate step between the seeds, which are nice and cheap and easy to ship, and the bulbs, which are big and bulky and tend to be quite a local business. This kind of business can actually be shipped from a state away or a province away, quite some distance. They box these and they send them out to you, and you get many plants in a small package. So this tray here might have 72 or 162 or 288 plugs in it, and you get a box of 4, and that may be even your minimum order is just a box of 4. So you end up being able to buy a lot of plants and a lot of variety from these suppliers with just a very small commitment. Now, speaking of that plug and cutting business, there are a lot of suppliers, a lot of local greenhouses and national greenhouses that produce these plugs and plants for growers and for nurseries and for cut flower growers. There are so many of them, in fact, that usually they don't deal directly even with their wholesale customers. They deal through brokers, and the big brokers in this space, people like Ball, who I mentioned before, is just a beast. They own everything. And the advantage of that is they deal with everyone, and so if you get a Ball account, you can actually buy from just a wide range. They have a piece of software called WebTrack where you can search the plants you're looking for, the region you're looking for, the dates that you want them and everything else, and there will always be a ton of suppliers available for you there if the plant is at all common in the trade. Now, the one thing I will mention about that is because you may be dealing with a supplier, for instance, that's in South Carolina, and if you're buying from, say, Washington State, the distances there, you're going to have to watch very carefully and learn how to read this so that you don't end up committing to something that has super high freight rates. So it is a really good idea to talk to your rep once you've signed up for an account. Just shoot them a quick email and say, hey, these are the kinds of plants I'm looking for. I'm looking not to spend too much on freight. I'm looking for somebody with low minimums. They may have some suggestions for you. That's almost the exact email that I sent to my rep last week, and she sent me a list of, say, 10 or 12 suppliers who can get to my location pretty inexpensively and do so routinely. So I was happy to hear that. But in addition to Ball, there's people like McCutcheon, Formosco, and I want to say, here's a cheat that you can find the list of this. And what I would suggest you do, maybe I'll throw up a screenshot of this, is go through to a large grower, a large greenhouse grower like Plug Connection, and open up their page that says, who are our brokers? And you'll see a list on there of dozens of brokers who are either regional or national brokers, and there might be somebody available for you who you can get an account with locally. Now, minimums might range in the range from, say, 400 to 1,000 on most everything we're talking about, except for seeds. When you're talking about bare root, or if you're talking about these plugs or other plant sources, maybe 400 to 1,000 would be about average, which I understand can be off-putting to a lot of people. But once again, if you're talking about pooling some of these resources or joining your order with another small grower, or even other small gardeners or your garden club, you can reach that number with a little bit of pre-selling in advance. It isn't that hard. I have seen some suppliers out there with much larger minimums, like $4,000 or $5,000, and those ones, though, they're few and far between, and I think they just don't want to deal with small growers at all. So that's it. So I hope you found this useful to go through some of the suppliers and what they supply. And if you have any questions on this topic, please drop them down below the video, and I'll see what I can do to help.